A playbook, yes, has a reason to exist, but if you only stick to that playbook, well, you're going backwards. You have to break the rules. If you really mean growth, you have to take brave steps.
I think that's what brands, businesses need to do, is you need to get brave at trying new things. Trying something that hasn't been done before within that business is incredibly innovative.
Innovation doesn't always have to be like fancy technology or whatnot. Innovation is in the context you're in the space you're in, what is different? What haven't we done before?
And it has to go back to the customer value, because if there is no value to the customer, they're not
There
going
is
to
no
buy it.
business.
Yeah, it's literally that simple.
The most important thing, besides knowing who your ideal customer is also knowing, and what are we for them?
Sometimes marketing seems fluffy over here, but the reality is it powers sales, that powers business growth. What advice would you give them when it comes to really driving that commercial growth within their business?
Oh God, you've just opened a massive can here. We need another 2 hours for this one.
Hi guys, and welcome to another, what I know is going to be, and I say this every time, amazing episode of Marketing in the Madness. Because the whole podcast, right, is about innovation and how marketing drives innovation. But today I am going to be chatting to someone who's going to really focus in not just on the innovations that have happened and need to happen in marketing, but also the transformations that need to happen in order to really drive profitability within business and accelerate the commerciality side of things, which is essentially, let's be honest, what marketing is all about in the long run. So, Heidrun, welcome. So I'm just going to give Heidrun Late, I'm saying her name correctly. The reason I can remember this is because I'm late for everything. And I actually thought Heidrun's name was pronounced Lute.
Could be.
Till this very moment. So for those of you that want to find her on socials, it's Heidrun, Heidrun Luyt.
Beautiful.
Yes, cool. See, I know how to spell your name, just maybe didn't know how to say it.
It's not an easy one.
No, but Heidrun and I actually have known each other, I think, or met originally 12 years ago.
Don't say that.
I know, I think it must have been. Honestly,
Yes.
It's scary. When you were working at one of my favourite places, David Lloyd.
Yes.
I am a member of David Lloyd to this day. In fact, I was there doing Blaze this very morning. I wasn't so much a fan of David Lloyd back then, just because
But you became one.
I don't think we had one near me at the time. So David Lloyd actually overtook our local, I think it must have been a Virgin. But you were there at the time. I was working for a digital agency and you were doing a big digital transformation project.
Correct, yeah.
And we were in as one of the agencies to pitch. Sadly, we didn't win. I think we did come quite a close second.
Came very close.
Yes.
You came very close.
And then, I'm going to say
And you made
it.
a massive impression on me, hence
Oh,
we're still talking.
Exactly, which is great. And actually what happened, I think, is you guys went with someone else, but then did come back to us afterwards because they didn't quite deliver on their promises. So again, from a new business point of view, guys, interesting to always stay in touch, always be
stay in
nice,
touch.
because
Once
you
have a
never know.
relationship,
Yeah,
foster
exactly.
it.
What's going to come back. So, Heidrun, apart from being at David Lloyd, of course, you have worked in lots of huge businesses to help them transform their marketing to, hit their commercial goals. Can you give us a bit of a potted history about you, your career, where you've worked, and then, we can go on to talk about all of the different things that you've done and how you've helped these businesses grow.
Well, I'm a bit of a serial commercial transformer, hopping across industries. And I think I've done that really deliberately. So starting off in fashion retail, then going into consumer goods with Le Creuset, then into health and leisure with David Lloyd Leisure. Was amazing. And then making a massive jump into the fintech industry and do derivatives trading, marketing for derivatives trading. I had no idea how to spell derivative at the time, let alone how to market it. But what an opportunity. And then 7 years on from that, finding myself in B2B SaaS with Pipedrive. So amazing journey there for the last 2.5 years. Looking forward to what's to come next.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting about you, because lots of people tend to stay in their lane when it comes to the industry that they work in. So if they've, started out in retail or beauty, they'll stay in retail and beauty. What made you want to move across to various different industries?
I think in the beginning of my career, where the focus is more on learning the technical skills and thinking about marketing, is a massive field. I mean, there's so many facets of marketing, right, that you have to get under your belt if you really want to do it well. And so the early days, it was all about just learning the different technical skills. And I thought, hold on a moment, okay, if I move from job A to job B, it needs to be a different technical skill, so I learned something new. But I could also do that in a different industry and learn something on top of that, right? And the more I did it, the more excited I became about what's next, because every industry works slightly differently, different focus, different technology, different type of people, different problems to solve, different opportunities to go after. And that in and of itself just made it incredibly interesting. But equally, when you as a marketer go into a space that you have very little information about or knowledge about, at the end of the day, you are the consumer. And that means you're absolutely objective, eyes wide open. And you look at everything that you learn and go, why would it be like that? Or do I really understand this now? And in that way of exploring, you actually do your job far better, because you find the things that are creating hurdles for consumers to understand, oh, this is the value this product creates for me, or this is the value that service creates for me. And you immediately have an angle to actually transform and create innovation and create better customer value, which in the end drives better business growth. So that was ultimately the kind of driver for me to continuously do something new and something different for me. One, because I learn a lot, but two, because I actually felt I can do my job far better.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it gives you, exactly like you started to highlight there, the ability to ask questions. Sometimes ask stupid questions. Like I always say this to my team, like ask, like you don't know the answer, like ask Google, or actually asking questions is, what drives innovation to a certain extent. Because if you always assume, oh, it's always been done like this, it's, let's say, you'd started out in the retail sector, you'd stayed in that sector, you'd know it inside out, you'd know what you're doing, you would trust the old ways that you've been delivering for years and years and years. So I think you've made a really smart move there by jumping to totally new sectors. You have to be more inquisitive. You have to ask more, sometimes basic, but you have to ask more questions in order to understand and then come up with new solutions. And I think having the experience of them working in totally different sectors also enables you to look at things totally different and take learnings from other sectors. It's going to really make people think about what they're doing, because you're dealing with a totally different ecosystem in the world, of David Lloyd than you were, when you were working for high-end, luxury retail brands.
And it's a matter of, don't get me wrong, every industry, evolves and, moves on and has new problems to solve, etc. So you never stand still, no matter where you are. It's just the more you move across industries, the more you are pushed to actually learn faster and understand, quicker. And therefore, because you get to see more, your toolbox builds up much quicker. And the next opportunity you have, wherever that is, you go, hold on a moment, I've seen something similar. It's not quite the same, but it's similar. And let me just get that tool out of my toolbox and see if I can make it work in here as well, right? And so you immediately have far more diverse thinking. You have, far more innovative thinking within that. But equally, you're, using what you've already seen and learned. And so there's a good element of connecting.
Yeah, totally. And that is, I guess, what marketing's all about, really, is connecting those dots in order to drive revenue, become commercially astute.
Exactly.
Can you name, sort of talking around that kind of approach to innovation, something that you've done, maybe when you've entered one of the businesses that you've worked for, that you're allowed to talk about, something really innovative that you've delivered that's really helped change a business from a marketing perspective?
An example to give here is when I joined IG Group, derivatives trading. As I said to you before, I had no clue about derivatives. I remember the conversation I had with my husband, like, why would I do that? Like, I'm not quite sure about it. And he said, I have a feeling you would actually really like it. It'll put you on your tippy toes and you'll be just in your element. So I gave it a go. But because I had no idea about it, I just needed to learn quite quickly, like, what is it all about? How do the markets move? What do the different instruments and products mean? How does the platform work? And so I used the materials that, IG already had for its clients. I read through it all. I checked the platform, and I thought, Jesus, I'm not such a slow learner, but it doesn't make sense to me. So I checked with a few other people that weren't traders either, and they were equally going, I don't get it. Like, this is too hard, right? And then I thought, but I could be a potential customer of this business. So if I don't get it, and if the other people I checked who equally could be, customers of that business don't get it, we have a massive problem, because the content was created by traders of many, 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 many years, right? That all speak the jargon and all know it inside out. The platform, you went on and you went, where to even start? And it actually really frightened you. So using that feedback and then checking in with customers that had just tried, gone through the kind of process and gotten the same feedback, we started to change the content quite dramatically. We started to bring education into the platform. We started to bring a step-by-step process to the platform, ultimately creating customer experience, but breaking it down so that something that is actually really exciting and intellectual can at the same time be enjoyable and fun, because you don't feel like a numpty, right? You get it and you go for it and you try it out. So it's putting yourself in the customer's shoes, and through your experience, understanding where is that lever that I can actually pull to create some innovation. And innovation doesn't always have to be like fancy technology or whatnot. No. Innovation is in the context you're in the space you're in, what is different? What haven't we done before that could ultimately create more value for the customer? So that's just one example.
I love that. And you're so right. It's actually, like, everyone thinks technology, technology does drive a lot of innovation. It's what I talk about a lot on this podcast when it comes to marketing, because I think we're at a really interesting point in time where there's more change than ever happening, which is being driven by technology. But it's so important to remember what you've just said, because innovation isn't just technology. There's a huge amount that is just change, trying something new, trying something different, trying something that hasn't been done before within that business, even if it's been done by other businesses, is incredibly innovative. And I think for you there, kind of scaling things back and really just focusing in on, what can I do to make this more understandable is hugely innovative, because like you say, these traders who know it inside out. I log into the Hargreaves Lansdown, which is potentially, quite easy to understand. And I still find it quite like, oh, am I buying the right shares or doing the right, it's confusing when you get into that world. So actually simplification in that world is innovation.
And I guess that's, again, right, kind of moving through different industries. You pick up how a particular industry work, what tools they use, what channels they use, whatever. You go into a different industry and they do it very differently. And you go, hold on a moment, this is really interesting. I like it. I'll continue doing it. But they haven't even touched X, Y, and Z. And if you think about the customer profile, they're completely missing a trick. So when I joined the B2B world, and I remember to the day, I was in a room with about 100 other CMOs, all B2B. And up until that point, my background, I had some B2B under my belt, but it was mainly B2C. And so I was talking to them to begin with, and it felt like, hey, are we speaking a different language? And I told them, what I'm working on and, what channels I will add and whatnot. And they were all like, oh, what? No, what? You're doing this for a B2B business? And I said, yeah, because if you think about the type of customer we have, that was, back then at Pipedrive, it makes utter sense. These customers hang out in these channels and they do want to, hear about a solution that helps them, makes their lives and their business lives better. So why wouldn't I be talking to them on these channels? And it is just because it was natural to me coming from other industries that, use these particular B2C marketing channels to try it out in a B2B space was quite natural for me. but it was almost this kind of shock horror moment.
Yeah.
For the other B2B marketers. But anyway, we know the trends are now more and more merging anyway, and I'm really glad about it. I mean, there shouldn't be a separation of, you must only do X in this world and only Y in that world. Well, that's the death of innovation, right?
Yeah.
You should just try out what you think makes logical sense in order to create customer value. I keep coming back to customer value because that's what it's all about, commercial transformation, right?
Yeah, it has to go back to the customer value, because if there is no value to the customer, they're not
There
going
is
to
no
buy
business.
it. Yeah, it's literally that simple. I love what you were talking about there, about going where your customers are and showing up in channels that maybe normal, traditional B2B business. And this is a hot topic for me. So I hope I'm not going to overtake the whole podcast with this. Because obviously I also work in B2B marketing. In fact, I've also just adopted Pipedrive.
There you go. Okay.
So we're on our Pipedrive induction journey, I think I'd say, at the moment. So we're getting everything set up. I would love to know, so what did that, because I'm really starting to see this. The world is changing. We all know that we live and breathe on socials. I know I bang on about this all the time, so I'm really sorry, listeners and watchers. But I really, kind of advocate businesses taking a social first approach when it comes in the world of B2B now, because in fact, we see 80-90% of our results for our clients come through social media now, not through more traditional methods like email marketing, etc. And that's because we all live and breathe on social media. We go to our networks to find our products, and that's social networks, but also friends, family when it's in our personal life, colleagues, potentially friends and family, sometimes in the business world. Like, who do you trust that could help you do X, Y, and Z? Referrals through your social network are incredibly important. So businesses in the B2B world that aren't showing up, I don't think, on social are really starting to miss a trick. So can you talk to me about anything that you have done, I guess, in that B2B world? It doesn't have to be at Pipedrive, done or seen. That's really, because I do think we're at a huge intersection of change at the moment, that you really saw had a bigger impact than maybe you thought it would, or that really helped drive a change within the business.
I refer back to what I said, right? There's almost a little bit of an industry or, type of marketing playbook, right? And you almost just go by the rules, a bit in a blind fashion. That's silly, right? A playbook, yes, has a reason to exist because it holds things that have proven to work. But if you only stick to that playbook, well, you're going backwards.
Yeah, break the rules.
You have to break the rules. And to me, it always starts and ends everything with that customer. And I have to really think, well, who is that customer? That obviously, like, B2B is a big space, right? It's very, really different if you have a micro or kind of, solopreneur as your audience versus an enterprise business. Completely different kettle of fish in some regards. And then you have some elements that, still remain the same. But all I'm saying is really think hard about who's my customer. Like, go deep, deep, deep on this, ideal customer profile. Don't just touch the surface. Really go deep down on what are their needs, their behaviors, where do they hang out, who do they ask for advice, how do they prefer to make decisions, etc., etc. And then based on that information, think, well, what channels are out there that could really kind of start the connection with those individuals, right? And if I take the B2B space, in particular, over the last few years, I can see a change now, and I'm really glad to see that change. But in the B2B space, it was very much, well, marketing is kind of, in particular in enterprise, the support function, creating a little bit of thought leadership, creating the sales kind of, playbooks, the white papers, the whatnot, but hang out in the background. That's crazy. You have to, as a marketing team, you have the biggest budget. You have to kind of go loud and proud out there, build that brand, make it real, not just digital. I mean, a lot of B2B players were digital only, and now you can really see a shift. And I brought that into, Pipedrive as well. You have to become real. And the reaction of being real, and by real, I mean, you're actually physically out there in the world. You're out of home. You're on audio. You walk down the street and you all of a sudden see this brand. I remember when we ran out of home on Tube, And I had photos sent to me like, oh yeah, I'm seeing Pipedrive on the tube. And oh my God. And we had partners kind of, text us saying, I can't believe the day has finally come, that, you're out there in the open. And so many leads came just from that. So again, kind of breaking what's normal, what's expected, and therefore you get more, right? And it's now the same conversation, for example, if you take AI. Oh, what's AI going to change? And, what is it going to master? And, how is it going to change what teams are focusing on, et cetera, et cetera. And there's more and more talk on AI, obviously taking the complexity of the multi-channel and the omni-channel and the whatnot, and really mastering the personalization, which, let's face it, the majority of businesses are just not getting right. It's just too complex, too many systems, et cetera, right? But let's assume AI can do that. Brilliant. And what does it do? It allows us to actually put focus on the human connection again. So more and more people are going back talking about real communities, real human events, right? Putting time into that. And if I look at you and I, right? I mean, 12 years ago we met.
Yeah.
It was that human connection that made us come back to each other, right? Time and time again.
Yeah, hi Jen, and thank you, by the way, because you're basically referencing what my business does and highlighting the importance of it, because that's what we do for the tech companies that we work with is, we put people front and center of the campaigns, and that's us putting on, fantastic dinners, in-person events, breakfasts, conferences, but also, creating really human content off the back of that. And that is where we see the most fantastic results for our clients. It's, recording podcast content like this. It's, putting in-person events together. It's becoming real, not of course using digital channels and also automation tools to, reach your audience. But I think that's often forgotten, and things that I've loved seeing, like especially when I go on holiday. But you can see, like when there's big marketing conferences that I go to, obviously we get involved with quite a few and do podcast takeovers, is that you see the marketing technologies there advertising. So people are getting smarter at that out of home stuff, that they're going, oh, we know there's this big conference or there's something happening. We're going to, do some out of home at the airport or, in Lisbon when it's Web Summit or whatever it might be when the conference is on, because we know our audience are there. And I think that's the key here. Where do they live and breathe? How do they want to interact? Where do they want to interact? What kind of language? I mean, there's so many things to think of when it comes to marketing.
You just have to be where your consumer is. And you also have to think, where does your consumer currently, given trends, just gets bombarded and therefore becomes blind? I'm not saying email marketing is dead. I'm not saying that. It's very alive. And at the same time, it's a thing that, from a B2B point of view, you just get bombarded every day with so many cold call emails. And so many people I know just go, delete, 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 delete. You just don't get the consumer, right? You don't cut through. So what else could you do? What don't they get anymore? Oh, maybe a physical direct mail, right? I mean, I'd actually be quite excited if I got something through the post. And
something
go,
nice.
What's that about, right? Yeah. So it's just think, where are they? What is almost kind of my must-have, like, the base I have to hit, but then where can I get them in the unexpected moment that is still relevant?
I'm going to go back to something you said a little while ago, but at the beginning of this part of the conversation, which was around the different consumer profiles. So really understanding your ICP, you're speaking to business owners of very small businesses, all the way up to a very different audience when you're marketing to enterprise. And I assume Pipedrive are also at both ends, where they're talking to very small businesses, but also, very driven probably, and the sales team really kind of gunning for those enterprise accounts. And I've got a lot of clients like that, Stripe being another one. So when you've got those very different profiles, potentially also living in the same place, how do you develop, because they've got very different messages often that they need to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
So how on earth do you make sure the right person's seeing the right message in the right place at the right time? Tough question. Sorry, I had to ask it though.
It's a tough question. It's also, up until now, quite a tough answer. And I referred earlier to the complexity, right? I mean, when I first started marketing many, many moons ago, the complexity level was far less, right?
I know.
There were a few
Easy.
channels that you kind of had to deal with, and happy days.
Direct mail. Literally, a lot of campaigns I used to do were like, we were just worried that the guy delivering the leaflets was going to chuck them in the bin. Like, it was so much easier. I mean, and that isn't even that long ago. That isn't that long. I mean, maybe I'm just old, but yeah.
I mean, I remember I started as a media planner.
Yeah.
And, my kind of spreadsheet back in the days of here, all of my channels, and these are the teams I have to, engage with to put that media plan together. And this is when things go out. Wasn't really complex, was easy to kind of, manage. These days, it's a plethora of channels. They are all highly reactive. You can do lots of things. I mean, it's so cool what you can do. But the difficulty is the more you can do, the more difficult it becomes, right? And if I look back at, the last few years, and I put myself again in the shoes of a consumer, I get more and more disappointed by how companies deal with me. I get a lot. I get volume, but I don't get quality. They don't take into account what I've already purchased, when I've purchased it. They, don't look further back in my history. They don't make clever suggestions. It's just blah. And I get fed up with it. Now, hopefully comes the use of AI, where businesses really make the most of that to tidy up and go, okay, let's just look at all of the various areas that we are operating in. Let's see where we need and could and should personalize, and then really create those customer journeys and the flows. And this is where obviously your customer segment comes in, right? Some businesses, okay, if you're a startup, you might have a kind of slightly smaller, set of segments. But if I think back at IG, we had loads. I mean, we had a B2C business, we had a B2B business, and a B2B2C business. And within the B2C, you had your day traders, you had your stock traders, you had your traders. They are all very different beasts. And then some that like to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. So how do you combine them all, right? And I think the important thing about, this concept of ideal customer profile that has, become so popular over the last few years, it's popular for a reason, because it is so important that you are, as an organization, 100% aligned of who are we going after. That's our focus. That's where the effort, the money, the everything goes. Where's our opportunity area? So, the things on the side where you go, if they come through the door, we welcome them. Like, we're happy, right? But we are not necessarily putting like a whole marketing campaign or a whole sales motion towards them. And then equally, you need to know those segments over there, they're not for us to touch. And here are the reasons why. It's not a static thing, because things obviously change, right? Your product evolve. If I take, for example, Pipedrive, it started off in the smaller company sizes, but the smaller companies over time, thanks to the help of Pipedrive, became bigger, right? And so they had more complex needs. And so the Pipedrive product evolved with the needs of the customers. And all of a sudden, what is your focus segment starts to shift. And you have to reevaluate where we're at now. Who's our ideal customer profile now? That doesn't change, every few days. It stays constant for quite some time. But it does change. And you have to have the entire business aligned behind that. If you ask 10 people, who's our ideal customer profile, they need to give the same answer. And the most important thing, besides knowing who your ideal customer is also knowing, and what are we for them? So know yourself as a brand and know what your differentiator and your value provision to these customers is. Again, if you ask 10 people, they give the same answer. And that what gives you that superpower framework to then send all of the various teams in an organization off to do their magic in their lanes to really serve that customer and that brand that you have.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. And I can see the passion, hopefully, when you're talking about it.
I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. It's such an exciting, I mean, that's what I love. And also it kind of boils down to psychology and you know how to win the hearts and minds of your consumers, and you've got to do that differently in different places at different times. I love the complexity of marketing, and I also love how much it changes, and the fact that you do need to keep reviewing things. Like, you know, you can't stay still in our world, and in fact, you know, more so than ever. Like you say, way back when, you know, I actually started my career in advertising, and it was very easy back then. You go, oh, I want to talk to, I don't know, men, and I'm good at advertising FHM, or like, you know, or certain groups. Like, it was, you know, if I want to talk to entrepreneurs, I advertise in, I don't even know if this is a thing, I'm just making it up, but Entrepreneurs World. You know, if I want to talk to executives, I, you know, talk to them through these other magazines or channels. Like, it was very easy to target your audience, whereas it is more complex now, but that is what makes it super interesting, I think.
I guess it was easy because you couldn't make it more complex because you just didn't have the information.
Yeah.
It made it probably less effective because you didn't have the information, and therefore it was a little bit kind of blah, widespread, and let's hope, you know.
Yeah, we couldn't track things as well. Yeah. And it well, I remember like me when I was then moved to kind of marketing agency side and, you know, media planners, which I was like in ad sales way back when, you know, be like, oh, well, these people drive past this, you know, this outdoor, you know, Clear Channel sign every day. And you just had no idea whether it was going to get an impact or not. So I do think, you know, we can track things, we can see the results, we can, you know, we have a lot more knowledge now, which is very exciting. But sometimes, you know, we still get it wrong. And actually, sometimes you've got to get it wrong, right? And again, that kind of maps back to innovation.
Exactly. And you learn. But what you just said about, oh, you know, so-and-so person drives past this out of home, whatever. It's just like, just to say, like, why should B2B think outside the digital box?
Yeah.
In particular, when you look at more the kind of mid-market or enterprise customers is, once you have your champion in a particular business and you're starting to foster the relationships to get to the influencers and the decision makers and the so-and-so, well, use out of home around their main office.
Yeah, how tough is that? I love
to
that
kind
idea.
of go, woohoo, we're here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about your, you know, conscious, you're traveling, you're seeing,
Oh, I love it.
You just have to kind of take all of the various angles that get a customer to your brand.
Yeah, that get them to notice you and to watch. And I mean, it's clever when you start.
And you can personalize
I was going to say, you're just trying to say the same thing I was going to say. Yeah, you so can. Yeah. I mean, how clever would it be? I mean, I'm not sure how personal you could get, but like if you could start to like put people's pictures. And I actually saw a VR kind of installation at Waterloo on my way here today of a shark in Waterloo that was, and even thinking like, you know, if you could bring some of the people to life or offer them a coffee, or, I mean, there's so much. I mean, you can get really smart with this kind of stuff when you've got the budgets. And I think that's what clients need to, you know, or I'm calling them clients because they're my clients, but brands, businesses need to do is you need to get brave at trying new things and, you know, driving those innovations. It doesn't have to be technology led. It can just be doing something different.
And that's the brave thing is really important, because if you think about different industries, you immediately have some stereotype in it, you know, like what would a bank ad look like? What colors would they use? What font type would they use? What language would they use? So you have certain stereotypes per industry. And then you look at, I find it super interesting, when you look at ads across kind of main players in an industry and you take the logo off and you go, who is that? And they all look the same, right? They're all blue or they're all whatever.
Yeah, blue in financial. And that's what's interesting about, sorry to interrupt, but I love this case study. Klarna, you know, entering a market as a pink, like it's so simple. Literally just showing up pink made them really, I mean, obviously with a personality and a really cool, you know, concept and technology behind it, but they showed up pink. They shook that industry to its core and everyone stood up and went, wow, that's really different. That's cool.
Exactly. But it takes the brave to go, oh, I know there's a stereotype and there's a reason for the stereotype because that's how, you know, people understand I am industry X, Y, or Z. But find the way to still be the industry, but different.
Yeah. Be interesting.
Because that's the only way that you actually, you know, create real awareness and like shake things up. Yeah. But it takes the brave.
And smart because, you know, again, let's be honest, a lot of us women hold the purse strings and probably would quite like to see some pink feminine energy in some of the tech company. I've just ordered a new Revolut card, and I've ordered it in like a nice pinky purple color because I feel like that's
your brand.
Yeah, that's what I'm wearing today, and
Katie
that's what I
Street,
want.
That's your brand.
Yeah, exactly. You've got pink purple hair. So I think that's the thing now is you've got to be brave. You can't be too stale and pale anymore.
If you really mean growth.
Yeah.
And it's not just a word.
Yeah.
But you really mean it. You have to take brave steps.
Is it, I don't know if it's Mark Ritson or Rory Sutherland that says, when the world zigs, zag. But that's it, basically.
If you just do as everybody else does, okay, you get some market share.
Yeah.
Right? But if you really want to grow, you have to find an angle to do it differently within that.
I love
stream.
Oh, Heidrun, I want to talk to you forever. The more these podcasts go on, the more I'm like, I need more time. But I want to ask you one last question. I think we've probably just covered it to a certain extent, but when it comes to, marketers really focusing in and driving that, I guess, giving marketers the commercial awareness that they need, but also how they should focus in order to achieve that commercial growth and, really deliver impact back to the business. Because I think sometimes marketing seems fluffy over here, but the reality is it powers sales, that powers business growth, that is business at the end of the day. So we have such an ability to, when we're in marketing roles, to really change the business. Marketing and the product or the service, whatever it might be, there's a real fine line between the two sometimes. So, giving advice to other marketeers that may be listening to today's podcast, what advice would you give them when it comes to really driving that commercial growth within their business?
Oh God, you've just opened.
If we need to go on, we'll just go on.
Massive.
I'm looking at our producer over there. He's like, no, you can't go on that long.
We need another 2 hours for this one. No, it's a real passion topic of mine. I need every marketer out there to understand that they're commercial key drivers. They have the power to have their hands in so many different, pots in the business, from creating that brand awareness first and foremost, which is so important. If people don't know that you exist and what you stand for, they're pretty unlikely to buy from you or, buy again from you. So number one, right? Then the power to actually make people to consider, make them have a look around, right? Have the push to get them to try and buy potentially, right? In the acquisition line. Teaming up with the sales team. I mean, you got all of the leads in the first place. Like, team up with the sales team. Understand what they're doing with the leads that you just gave them. Work together. It has to be one commercial goal in an organization. Accountability on both parts. No finger pointing. Accountability on the goal side. Accountability on the metric side. And working together. Yes, everybody then has their responsibilities in their own lanes, but you have to communicate. You have to put feedback back and forth. You have to inform. I'm doing X because I'm seeing Y in the market. That might have the following consequences for you, further downstream. So really come together. And as a marketer, let's face it, you quite often own the biggest budget in the organization. You owe it to the organization to return on that investment big time. So step forward into the light, center stage, run that P&L, and be commercial. Being commercial doesn't stop you from being creative. It doesn't stop you from being, highly data-driven. It doesn't at all. Commercial is an outcome of the various things you do. But you have to be commercial in order to make that business grow, in order to drive further customer value, and so on and so on and so on. I get so passionate about this topic because I've just seen too many marketers in my lifetime living this life backstage, being either a support function or being even a cost center. The word fluffy, I just get allergic to. So step up, understand your game, understand that you need a seat at the table to make strategic decisions for the organization and drive growth.
Love
Full
that.
stop.
Mic drop. That honestly is such good advice. And I love the piece that you say about, really getting to know the sales team and following your customers' full customer journey, because it's got to be seamless. It's got to work well. You can't be, handing leads over that aren't.
Exactly. And then comes, the post-sale bit. Like, what about your existing customers, right? You owe them the good onboarding, the nurturing, the upsell, the cross-sell. You have to be involved. It's still your gig.
Yeah. You can't stop marketing to your existing customers because they'll just leave.
Exactly.
Like, that's it. It's that simple. Heidrun, thank you so much. I literally could talk to you for the rest of today. I love your passion. And I love that we're kind of passionate about the same things, which is always great. I'm really excited to see what happens next for you. If you guys want to get in touch with Heidrun, please do connect with her on LinkedIn. She has a wealth of knowledge, well, as you've all heard today. So Heidrun, a big thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. It was brilliant. Thanks.
Hey guys, me again. I hope you enjoyed the episode that you've just listened to. And if you did, I'm going to do the annoying thing that all podcasters do, which is go and ask you to subscribe, because it really does make a difference to our rankings. And please do go subscribe, leave a comment, give us a 5-star review if you did love it. If you want to get in touch, do check out the email address in the show notes. Most importantly, again, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe by clicking the button somewhere that is on this screen. And it'll mean you get notified when new episodes go live.